Hello everyone, welcome to the CG Cookie live stream. This is the fourth in a series about creating this tropical environment. This is where we left off last week, and today we will be wrapping it up. There's just a few more things to be done and then we can call it finished. But I appreciate you showing up today. It might be all green. Excellent, thank you. Read my mind. I guess we're in a routine now, so thank you for that. But I forgot to post this, publish this stream until today, so it might be, you know, a small atmosphere, like I think of a band that, you know, plays big venues and then plays like a little bar or something, and intimate is the word for it. But it's gonna be fun. I like what we're doing today, the tasks that are at hand, and without any more introduction, I say we just get started. Cozy is another good word for it. All right, so if we look at this image, one thing in particular sticks out, and that's the sky. Right now we're using an HDRI to light the scene, but it's also being shown in the viewport. Like we can see the low resolution pixelated HDRI in the background. So we're going to add a billboard that's just a simple plane with a texture on it to represent a more appealing sky. And that's one thing we got to do. We also need to add the islands in the distance of the ocean. That's going to be really fun. That's probably the meatiest part of today's stream. But it's a fun technique. The shader gets fairly complex. We're doing some fun things with that, so I'm excited for that part. And then lastly, yeah, we'll run it, do a little bit of treatment in compositing, and call it a day. So let's get started. Right. So I think I'll begin with the sky, since I mentioned that first. Now, we could maybe try and create this procedurally, but I'm just going to take the easy way out and use an image and then a simple filter over top. And so I'm going to switch over to my browser and unsplash.com. You know, I've been using that a lot lately. I really like this site. If we look up clouds, we should get several good options. And the one that I am looking for, I should be able to recognize it. Watch it not show up today in this moment. Did I just miss it? I've used it like 3 times. Let's try that again. Clouds. What I'm looking for is like a very blue sky and, you know, 50% coverage of clouds. And I swear the one that I've been looking at is not here. That one could work pretty good. But that one's like one big cloud. Did I misspell cloud or something? All right, I guess we'll just use a different one. Though that really bothers me now. How bizarre is that? Maybe the artist like removed it or something. All right, we'll just use a different one then. Why not this one? Let's try cloudy sky. What I like about it is it's a very deep blue. There is one massive chunk of clouds, which isn't what I had in mind, but I think that'll look okay. I think that'll look fine. We can always try a different one. But all right, so I'm going to save this image to my downloads folder. Actually, I have the other one in there, so maybe I will still use it. I'm going to call this Clouds 2. I'll open up both of them and we'll make an executive decision. And then I'm using Krita now, which, by the way, if anyone has any advice on how to pronounce it, Krita sounds kind of silly, but Krita, you know, I feel like it needs some flair in the pronunciation. Also sounds silly. So I've been leaning towards Krita as the less silly option, but if anyone has any advice for how to pronounce it, I am all ears. But now that I'm in the Linux ecosystem, I've been getting used to Krita, and it's been going pretty well. I like it a lot. Let us open, let's see, Clouds 1 and 2. So this is the one I've been using, and I found it on Unsplash just like the other one. What I like about it is, you know, it's that 50% kind of cloud coverage, still a very blue sky. It was just appealing. This one is different. It's just one mass of clouds, but I don't want to do anything that you can't reproduce if that image is no longer on Unsplash for whatever reason. So what I like to do here, very simple, just in Krita, we've got, let's see, blur, no, not blur, it's artistic oil paint is the filter that I like to use here. And brush size of 2 has been working out. Yeah, so all that's doing is kind of simplifying the shapes and colors and making it look kind of stylized. And since the sky is going to be slightly blurred out with like a depth of field type effect, I just need it to fit more of the style a little bit rather than look like a photograph. And that's the whole goal here. So I will accept that and then also maybe adjust. No, I won't adjust any colors. I really just need the filter, and I'm going to save that out now. Wait, I think we export in Krita. There we go. So let me find live streams, projects, tropical, source, scene, record, library, texture, and we're going to call this, I guess we'll just save it as a JPEG. Sky billboard. Is that the right? Yeah. Okay. And switch back over to Blender. Rita. Oh, Krita. That really helps. Nice. Perfect. Yeah, Krita. Good. I'm glad I'm not alone. All right. So now that we have that saved, let's add it into Blender. And the way I'm going to do this is creating a plane, Shift-A mesh plane. Oh, I guess we can leave this view in particular. I want to leave that as our viewport rendering preview. And let's see, I don't need this top bar really. Header. Not show the header. There we go. Clean it up. And yeah, so that plane that we created right in the middle of the world, I'm going to rotate X 90 degrees. We're going to move this way back. Scale it way up. Let's like 100. All right. Now I'm going to open the image so I can find the dimensions. Image, where is that? Source, scene, record, library, textures, sky billboard. And then in our in panel, it's 1350 by 900. So if I look at if I hit the in panel on our object, and I can change the dimensions to be 1350 meters by 900 meters. Control A to apply the scale. Awesome. Now I just need to scale this up so that it's beyond the edge of our camera frame like this. All right. Now I can add that material. With that object selected, hit the new button, and we'll call this sky billboard. Let's add a texture, image texture, and that is already available in the file, sky billboard. All right, I don't need the principled BSDF. This is just going to be an emission node. So let's see what that looks like. Oops. All right, we can get a preview over here, and obviously it's too dark, so it's also not positioned ideally. Let's move it up. Let's see, I can't really scale it any lower. I guess it's just a big mass of clouds out there. That should be fine. That should be fine, right? We shall see. If I don't end up liking this, I will use the other texture. Yeah, so KJ, you're asking any reason why you didn't use the import image as a plane for this. I thought of it, and then I was like, but are those renderable? I guess was my initial reaction. So let me try that just so we know for sure. Couldn't remember if that was the case. What am I looking for? Edit preferences. Images as planes. That's already enabled. Okay. File import images as planes. Sky billboard. So yeah, is this renderable? Because that would have been, it is renderable. Yep, that's totally what I should have done. That would have saved time. So yeah, now I know that. I was afraid that it would come in and be kind of like a background image thing. So I forgot how that worked, but Thank you. That is a very good observation and suggestion. All right, so essentially I'm at the same point as doing that, but it just took like 5 minutes longer or whatever. So with the sky billboard, I want to increase the color value, and I'm going to add color, hue, saturation, and value. And I'm going to bump up the value. Let's try 1.5. Well, maybe just slide it. Maybe, wow, even higher, like 3. I want it to be, you know, an exaggerated version of our sky. So super colorful, super bright. And I think this value looks pretty decent. What about the hue? If I go more into a blue range, I actually think I like the more aqua color. So I guess I'll leave the hue at 0.5. Yeah, I think that looks good. All right, there we go. Easy addition of a sky. It makes this look more whole, I guess. Like now that we don't see the HDRI explicitly in the render. Now I will, just to be safe, go ahead and turn off shadows for this object. So in the material settings at the bottom under settings, we can change shadow mode to be none, just so it doesn't cast any shadow or interfere with any of that. Okay, great. So that's the first thing off the list. We can mark done. Next, we can move on to the islands. This will definitely take the majority of the time, but it's a lot of fun. So let's hit Shift A, and I'm going to add an icosphere. All right, maybe change the resolution, the subdivisions up to like 4. All right, and then move this off into the distance, scale it up. I am moving in all axes except Z. So G, Shift Z is how I'm doing that. Maybe I should turn on screencast keys. There we go. And I need to scale this up significantly. All right, so I'm just ballparking both the distance from our beach, but also the size that it would be in the render. All right, so I think that's maybe a little big. Control A, apply the scale. I like this size. And then we can sculpt this. Now I created it with a UV, with an icosphere, because I'm gonna be doing dynamic topology, and just the triangulation, you know, might as well just get there out of the gate. Oh yeah, you can do Shift A mesh. No, it's image. There it is. Image as planes. Yeah. Much better technique. All right, so it's ready. We're ready now to jump into sculpt mode on this object. I'll try to keep things named. Don't know that I've done that very well yet. This is island. Island.000, because I'm going to be creating 2. All right. Yeah, so this is very similar to the rock that we sculpted. We're just going to, like the same tools, the same brushes, we're just going to make it shape. We're going to shape it more like an island. And that's right, I was using this viewport to look at my initial render, so we can, you know, make it close. So this is the sort of island that we're trying to create. Kind of looks like a reverse state of Virginia, if any of you are familiar with that. So sculpt mode, and we will use dynamic topology. I don't care that there's vertex data. And first, let's just try shaping in general. Maybe lock the Z axis so I can pull this out and not worry about the height. Though that was probably premature, honestly. All right, so what I want out of the shape is for it to taper very nicely towards the ocean surface, right? I don't really want big cliff-like shapes like this. Not necessarily. I want the majority of them to slope nicely into the ocean. And so if I switch over to the crease brush with Shift-C as the hotkey, I can kind of push out along the surface to make sure that that slope happens. But yeah, right now just very generally creating this shape kind of like a blob in the middle of the ocean. Then we're going to switch to our, what do we call this? The scrape brush. And for our settings, I'm going to enable original normal. This way it kind of creates facets for us. Let's try that again. Switch back to the crease brush and let's add some like ravine detail. So holding control and pushing down. Once we add the material to this thing, it's going to be pretty neat how it works out. And you can you can sculpt after we've added the material. And so we're going to have like partial rock in the material and then partial like forest. And it will dynamically update according to the shape of our island. So it's going to be pretty cool to see that. All right, I want the main peak of the island to be a little more like in the reference, so come to more of a point. All right, I think now we've got the blobby shapes accomplished, so I can start focusing on that scrape brush. And yeah, very, very similar to the rock that we already sculpted. And something also to keep in mind is that the island will be blurred out due to some depth of field. We won't go crazy with the depth of field, but there will be some blur. So even though I want to create some details, we don't have to go crazy. Like a lot of it will be covered. And so if it doesn't look perfect, that's okay. The pressure is off to make this thing amazing because it will be covered slightly. So this also has been fun for me because I can kind of experiment. And if it isn't perfect, it's like, oh, well, it's close enough. But it keeps the creation process quick. And I really like that. I like that about stylized in general because realism, obviously, I like to do that as well. But I like to also not have the pressure of it being perfect. All right, I think we're looking like an island in general. If I compare it to my R&D version, the only real difference, the biggest difference is the fact that I also have this like, it comes down and then kind of curves back up. So I can add that if I want. Maybe switch my fall off to be, let's use the snake hook brush. Make my fall off that sharp point. Excellent. All right, take a look at how the silhouette looks in the camera view. Make some decisions about that. We can maximize it too, I suppose. All right, I feel like the island's maybe a little bit big, so we can scale that down. Let's jump back to object mode. Scale it down. Maybe move it off to the side a bit more. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Make sure my scales are applied. Nope, we're at 0.846. Control A, apply the scale. And now I think we can start adding the material. Man, I feel like I'm going pretty fast. All right, let's start then with the object selected. Hit the new button, and we'll call this mountain, not mountain, island. All right, so the big thing we want to do here is, dynamically, I say dynamically, cleverly have Blender only populate the parts of the island that are facing most directly upward with trees. And then for the like steep sides of the island, for example, this right here, wouldn't be trees, it would be the like raw rock of the island. That's kind of the idea. And you can see that in the reference. So, the steep cliff faces are rocky, and then the surfaces that are not so, that are more softly sloped or facing more directly up will be trees. That's kind of the goal. And we can do that pretty easily with a, what do you call it? The normal UV coordinate. So, but before we get there, let's start by creating just the base rock material, the color of it. I'm going to do that with a texture Voronoi. If we look at that in look dev mode, and what was I doing? Yeah, instead of intensity, we're going to go to cells. And instead of distance, we're going to use, was it Manhattan? No. Oh, it's closest. If I go to crackle, I really like this texture as a kind of stylized rock base, because most of it, like 75 to 80% of it is a solid color. And then you've got these actually three other random colors involved too. So if we plug this into a converter color ramp, we can create specific flags according to the rocky surface that we like. I think the scale should perhaps be, well, first I want to use the object coordinates. So Control T and use object instead of generated. And yeah, the scale values are very different between those two coordinates. So the scale needs to come way down to like 0.1. How about 0.02? That's kind of cool. Again, like this maybe doesn't look, keep in mind it might not look initially intuitive, but once we see it in camera, it'll look pretty decent. 0.05 maybe. Yeah, I think that's probably the better value. And now I'll make my flags, one of them to be this kind of darker brown, slightly brown, mostly gray, and then maybe move that around into the middle. Yeah, something like this. And maybe make this flag slightly in the bluish direction, ever so slightly. Okay, great. Now, bring down the lighter color. I don't want there to be that much contrast. Okay, let's try that. That is going to be the rocky color. And now for the green color, well, let's just start by adding a color mix RGB node. I'm going to try and take this slow because this material will become quite complex. So try and follow me, but it will grow in complexity. All right. The second color needs to be that general green, and then now we're ready to add the factor based on the normal value. So if I hit Shift A, well, no, actually we can use the texture coordinate right here. So we're going to use this normal value and plug it into a converter. Separate X, Y, and Z. All right, so remember your vector coordinates have those three axes just like in 3D space. And when we plug in the normal, this is just the X direction, so from the side. And you can kind of tell that if we look, the X is left and right according to our view. Y is going to be front to back. So you can see it's lit up on the front, lit up on the back, and black up on the front. And then Z is from above. Now, it doesn't look terribly intuitive right now, but if we add a converter color ramp and drag up the black flag, now you can start to see where our cliff faces would be and where the jungle would also be. White would be jungle, black would be the cliff face. So let's plug that into our mix node up here as to differentiate between the rock and the trees. All right, so I need to drag down the white flag so it's a bit more of a sharp transition between the two. Yeah, something like this. All right, this serves as kind of the block out of our material so far. There's still a lot to be added. But again, what's really neat about this is if I come into sculpt mode and pull this flat, basically, it starts to create more cliff face, more rock face. So it's dynamic like that, which is really neat. That's a very cool part about Eevee. Kind of create this little cove, so to speak. Yeah, pretty neat stuff. Although I don't want a little bit of forest in the middle. Something like that. I like this very non-destructive type of working, so we can always adjust the shape later if we don't like it. Excellent. So yeah, with the trees, we're going to do something similar where we just lightly broke up the rock color with this pattern. We're going to add a noise pattern now, texture noise. And this is going to govern a differentiation of tone in the tree material. So yeah, I can just leave that here, I suppose. I do want it to use object coordinates. And the values therefore become much smaller. I should probably save my scene. Iterate one version up. Excellent. And yeah, the noise texture come down to like 0.1, 0.05. Let's try that. Add a converter color ramp. And this is where we can grab that green color and create different versions of it in the flags. Make one dark. I'm going to drag one, add another one in the middle by control left clicking. And then the upper one will make more in the yellow direction. Remember, that's the same sort of color scheme that we added to all of our vegetation. So it should fit and be consistent. All right, just a generic noise pattern. That should work well for the trees. If we want more detail, we can add that just to make it a little more high resolution, so to speak. Though that shouldn't matter too much. All right, now this can replace the simple green swatch that we used as a test. So yeah, this will essentially become the color of our material, but there's more to be done because a lot of the work will happen within the bump map. We're gonna really work the bump hard for us to make sure it reads as the shapes we want. And we will do that first for the rock with a texture, Voronoi texture. Nice. I've not used it very often, but this, you could also, for this separating the normal value, I think Andrew Price did a video on like how it could be used for dust, for example, because dust falls on, surfaces facing up. So that's another great use for it. But the person who blew my mind open when it came to really what you can do with nodes, and this is a very simple example, but Bartek Skropa, he is a genius. And if you want to check out it's in the Shader Forge course. It's the wood lesson. I highly recommend you watch the wood chapter. It's 42 minutes, but it will blow your mind about what is possible with nodes. So definitely check that out if you haven't seen it already. He does this stuff like separating XYZ and doing wild things with it. All right, so back to the Voronoi. That's going to become kind of rocky ridges in the rock material. So we're going to use the object texture node, and let's take a look at what that looks like initially. We need to come way down. 0.05 seems to be a good default value. And yeah, that actually should work pretty well. But I do want to break this pattern up. So if you've never seen this used as a rocky texture, let's just quickly plug that into a vector bump node so you can sort of get the idea of what that's going to be. Plug it into the height socket and then height into the normal. The normal of our principal BSDF, color goes into the base color, and I know that my specular is going to be way too high, so I'm going to go down to 0.01 for that. All right, now let's get a preview of what the material looks like so far. Let it compile. That doesn't look right. Normal, base color. Huh. Oh, maybe I should smooth the normals. Right-click, shade smooth. Oh, that's right. I remember because our object is so massive, a value of 1 is way too small for the bump. So I find this interesting, and I don't necessarily know why it works this way, but the size of your object does determine how strong your bump is, how strong this value is. So if we crank this up to like 20, we'll start to see the effect. All right, and you can start to see in the rocky areas, we're going to make this fit a kind of ridge type look. You can see it in the example, like all these rocky ridges come from the Voronoi. So to make that happen, we're going to mix the incoming texture coordinates with a noise texture. So I'm going to Shift-Control-D to duplicate this noise, maintaining the same input. And we're going to add a color mix RGB node and mix in that noise texture. All right, so we're affecting the incoming UV coordinates that's going to the Voronoi. And yeah, I knew I probably jinxed myself, but this is running generally much slower when I'm streaming. So Eevee's kind of bogging down a bit because I said Linux Loot could handle it, right? Let me save the scene real quick. I just need to make sure I save enough. All right, so yeah, how this texture is going to affect our Voronoi, we look at that by itself. Right now, the pattern, I guess, is, well, for one, I want to change the blend mode to overlay. That tends to give some more interesting effects. Let's make the scale like 0.1, perhaps. And then slowly bring up the factor. There we go. Now you can see that that is significantly breaking up the pattern. All right, so this is turned off and then on. And what that does to the bump, it starts to look much rockier now. The only other thing I want to do is add a vector mapping node, and I want to squash the rock pattern sort of vertically. So with the scale in Z value, we can go to like, we use the texture mode 0.5, is that right? Yeah. So we can come down this way. All right, so now it's a little more horizontal. Although you can tell that it's not nearly as janky at the bottom as it is up top. So maybe I should make that value less, 0.3. Maybe the value in general is a little too low, a little too high. So 0.03. There we go. I can only judge it so well in this mode. The real test is going to be once it is applied only to the rock portions of the material. So I need to sort of do that sooner rather than later. To get this set up, I'm going to mix it, color mix, using that same value that we separated from the Z, the XYZ, all right? So that's this guy. All right, so therefore the black I want to be the rock bump, the white will be the tree bump. And so this can be used as a factor for this mix node. There we go. Now you can see how it's segmented off. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. Not bad. Yeah, I like that. I should also probably switch to, there we go. Okay. Yeah, this look dev mode just was, the lighting was way too different from the render, so there's no point to really use that now. All right, so that looks pretty good. It's a little too strong, I'd say, now that we see it in context. So let's go down to like 10. Yikes, even less than that. The lighting did a lot for this. Let's go to 5. There we go. That does look better. Though now I'm not sure I like the squashing effect that I added. Yeah, I think that in general looks a little better. Maybe I can shrink this Voronoi. Where is it? Yeah, this size up here, like 0.1. Yeah, that's going to be fine. Again, most of it will be blurred. Kind of creating a tangent right here with the peak of this island kind of touching the cloud. Don't really like that. Let's try and move the island off. Okay, that helps. All right, so we have adjusted the rock texture. Let's add some tree texture now. Save my scene. Right, so the tree texture is going to also use Voronoi textures, but in a different way. So let's add, well, let's just duplicate one that we've already been using. Shift D to duplicate. Let's use a clean object texture coordinate. Maybe I'll add a reroute node just to make this a little more clear. With complex materials, I have a problem of making it a spaghetti mess that's hard to read. So I'm going to try and get better about that. Yeah, so the Voronoi texture, if we look at that by itself, we can, if we just convert to a color ramp and then switch the flags around, and then, well, I need to bring down the black flag. But what we get is this sort of cluster of little bubble-like shapes. And that's going to look really good for treetops. It's going to achieve that effect very easily. I just need to make it much smaller, which means the scale value goes up. So let's see, let's try 1. That might be a little bit too small. Let's go to 0.8. Yeah, maybe that. Actually, 0.5, I don't know, somewhere between 0.5 and 0.8. Let's get it plugged into the bump map before we know for sure. So we should be able to plug this straight into the mix, right? Because we had a temporary color, this little gray swatch, that was waiting on the tree input. And now we can plug that tree input in. There we go. So rock texture, tree texture. See what that looks like plugged into the bump. All right, that does not look great. I think I probably crushed the values a little too much. Whoops. Yeah, that's more like it. So up close, it's like this is looking really weird, but far away and in the camera, we're starting to ballpark these shapes so that it makes sense. Now, I'm thinking that the transition between tree and rock is a little too strong right now. So we can consider bringing that down a bit. That's this flag up here. There we go. Make the transition less stark, though we do get some white trees, which is kind of weird. Oh well, I don't have to be perfect. That's okay. Yeah, the effect is being sold. We can also actually make a second version of this. Right? So the trees don't have to stop immediately and then the rocks start. We can have like a blending so that it implies like grass. It goes from tree to grass to rock. And to do that, we will duplicate that, that color ramp, Shift Control D. And then this one will become the influence for the bump separation. And then this upper one will be for the color. So let me wait for it to compile, and then I'll show you what I mean. So the color one I want to make a little more, yeah, so as I bring the black flag down, you can see that the green color starts spreading into the rock, and that's going to imply, more of a grassy type transition, something like this. Yeah, that looks much, much better. And then the other one that we, this other flag, if I do the same thing, we see the tree's border start to encroach on the rock, but if I drag it up, we get a nice blend. All right, so from far away, this looks like more dense forest next to less dense forest. Always keeping in mind to check how it looks in the viewport. And yeah, I think it's turning out pretty good. Though there are a couple more things that we can do. I like to add another Voronoi to, it's basically the same texture as this. So let me show you what I mean. Shift Control D this. And I want the scale to be smaller, like 0.2. See what that looks like. Actually, like 0.1. 0.01, maybe 0.05. Right. So this, if we switch to like B-spline, perhaps, it'll make it a softer transition. So now I've got kind of high areas of treetops and low areas of treetops. If I add this or mix it with our other texture, because right now, if we look at it, let me just show you what it looks like now. All the trees are kind of implied to be the exact same height. And if we break that up a little bit with this other texture, then it'll be the illusion of varying heights. So let's add a color mix node. User interface is noticeably slower as I stream, which is kind of annoying. Now, should I use a mix or an overlay? Let's start with mix and see what happens when I bring the value down. So all the way down, it's the treetops with the same height. And then as I bring it up, the treetops start to gain different heights. Do you see that? This is probably going unnecessarily deep down the rabbit hole. I'm not sure that this will show up in the render, but I don't know. It's kind of fun to add these different layers. All right, so let's see what that looks like plugged into the material. My fear is that the treetops will now have a more subtle bump map with that mixture involved, and the rock will be too strong. But let me wait for it to compile. Yeah, I do think that's partially the problem. So basically, I want to increase the strength of the bump for the trees and decrease it for the rock. So what I think I'll do for the rock specifically, let's see, where am I at in the material? What I can do is kind of mix it, color mix RGB. Oh yeah, I shouldn't be, yeah, so I don't have, you're right, Jake, that Sheepit does run, it takes up processing power. I don't have Sheepit running. I thought I did for a second. And yeah, so I'm going to mix the rock version with a, no, is this what I want to do? Oh, that's not the rock version. Sorry. Let's Shift D duplicate this down here. This was the factor. So let's get rid of that. Control X. So yeah, by mixing the incoming rock texture for the bump, by mixing that with gray, we're going to be dialing down the strength. You can see as I go all the way down, we have full strength of rock. As I go up, we have less strength until there's nothing. Like a gray value, any solid color looks like no bump. All right, so I can pick and choose the strength now, maybe increase the overall strength to like 10 so that trees are stronger. And yeah, that's a good mix, I think. All right, are we done with the island? I think we might be. It's unfortunate that, well, I don't know how well it looks. Let me maximize this view. If I rotate this around, maybe reposition it, I think that looks better. Maybe grab in sculpt mode. I want to move this peak over a little bit. Do I not have my, oh, I had the wrong object selected. Isn't that awesome how dynamic the material is? I think that is just fascinating. All right, I think we should be ready now. I wonder if I actually should add a little bit of rock detail. So I'm using my crease brush to kind of, yeah, that breaks up that monotonous tree color. All right, so add a little bit of cliff in there just by, you know, if I undo, you can see I'm just bringing an indentation into the material. There we go. Excellent. Save my file. And then to get the other island, I should be able to just duplicate this, rotate it a different orientation. and place it somewhere else. Maybe scale it down a bit. It's a little too rocky on that one side, so how about we sculpt it a little bit differently, maybe with my inflate brush. Very cool. The rocky pattern doesn't look great over there, in my opinion. Let me tweak that a little bit. I think it was this. Maybe I should try rotating it. That doesn't look bad. Make sure this island is a little further back, because I would like there to be some, when I add the atmospheric fog, I would like one of the islands to be more covered in that atmosphere than the other. So increasing the distance between them is how we can make that happen. All right, so I think with this, we're kind of done with the islands. I am flying through this. I did not expect to go this fast. Might be a fairly short stream today because this is going better than I expected. All right, so let's, yeah, I mean, I guess we can start compositing. Although, what do you guys think about the cloud texture? I feel like it's too much cloud and not enough sky. Does anyone agree with me? Press 1 if you would like me to swap out the sky texture with the other one I rehearsed with. One. I agree. All right. I will swap it out. I'm going to save this file, and it's the exact same process I already showed you, using the Krita filter. So I will just load the other texture up. Let me first copy it from the correct directory. Sorry, show you what I'm doing. So projects, Blender, tropical Eevee environment, source, scene, R&D, library, texture, Sky Billboard 01. Let's copy that, move it into the recorded version. All right, Sky Billboard 01. And now I will do what I should have done in the beginning, which was, whoops, just bring in the texture as an image plane. So if I look in the camera, I wonder if that will, let's see. All right, I'm looking in the camera. I just click and drag my image texture over here, and we get an error. Huh, it doesn't like the camera view for some reason. Where is that? All right, that's fine. Wait, this is what I was expecting. So clicking and dragging an image doesn't make it renderable. Is that a flag or something? Source, display orthographic, display as image. Okay, so clicking and dragging an image in here does work, but this is the type of reference where it's not renderable, I guess. Unless someone knows something I don't know, but whoops, let me move this out of the way. Yeah, so I need to, I guess, delete this and instead go to Shift-A, image as planes. There we go. There it is. This is going to look much better. All right, let's move it back. I want to say it's like 2,000 meters. That must not have been right. No, yeah, I was right. scale like 1,000. Holy cow, this scene is big. Perfect. Okay, then I can scale this up, make sure it reaches the edges, beyond the edges of our camera frame. Yes, this is the kind of cloud coverage I want. Though, let me use this. What is the material for this like? There isn't one. No, there is one. Why is it so slow? Why is this so slow? Let me get rid of this material. I'm going to save a new version. I'm going to get rid of that material and add our other sky billboard and just choose this other sky billboard 01. There we go. All right, the values are going to be not exactly what we want. Yeah, I do like this a lot better. 1.5. Yeah. I want to crank up the saturation a bit. We could also rotate it 180 if we like clouds from the other direction. I think that looks pretty good. Make sure we don't see the edges, which we do. Nice. Yeah, I think that looks better. Well, the whole side over here is kind of covered in white. There we go. Anyway, I'm fine with that. Excellent. So that looks better. We like the sky more. Now we're ready to composite, and then we're basically done. Just do a couple tweaks in compositing, and we can call it a day, an early day. Control S to save. Okay, so whenever I think about the composition, let's think about what we want to add, what kind of treatment we want to add to make this fully realized, fully finished. For one, I've already mentioned atmospheric perspective, not perspective. Is that what it's called? It's the atmospheric like fog. You know, in our atmosphere, you look at things over long distances, and it gets, the further you get away from where you are locationally, the saturation goes down, and also it gets just more towards like a gray or lighter color typically. So that's like the atmosphere that I want to add. It will make the islands feel like they're further back in space. So that's one thing. I also want to add like your vignette, a little bit of color manipulation, and also some depth of field. All right, so with those things in mind, I want to use a mist pass. I want to use a Z-depth pass for defocus. And I think that's the only thing I need in terms of passes. Okay. Atmospheric perspective is the right term. Thank you, KJ. And with that said, I want to set up the mist pass. I guess that's what I need to do initially. So to set up the mist pass in render layers, I just enable mist, but I also need to set a distance for that mist. So if we go to the world settings, now that we've enabled the pass, we have this these settings available to us. It's hidden, I think, unless you turn on the mist pass. So I need to figure out the distance from the camera to our sky. I guess I could just click on the sky and look up our location value in Y, which is 2,178 meters. So I'll make it 2,200 meters, the end. The depth for the mist pass is 2,200 meters. Fall off is quadratic. I actually think that's fine. I wonder if I should make it linear. Let's actually try linear first. And the start being 5 meters away from the camera, that's fine with me. Control S. Now we should be able to make sure I have the depth pass, the Z coming with it. It is coming with it. So render image. Haze. Yeah, it's another good word for it. right, let's look at the mist pass. Oh, I didn't realize that the mist had its own alpha channel. Huh, I guess that makes sense. All right, so we should be good now to switch over to our compositing workspace. I don't need the timeline because this isn't an animation. Enable use nodes. And yes, so first thing I'll add is that atmospheric haze, atmospheric perspective with Shift-A color mix RGB. Didn't it used to be called mix RGB? Maybe now it's just called mix. So yeah, we can use that mist pass as a factor. And if I get this set up with a viewer node, we can see what that's doing. And all it's doing is adding this white color to the background according to that mist value, which actually, yeah, linear looks pretty good. Though, is that exactly what I want? Let me see with the before and after. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. The color, though, I don't want it to be gray. That makes it look like kind of a rainy day. I want it to be more in the blue spectrum. Something more like this. Now, it's way too strong. For one, it's covering our entire sky background, which we do not want. So I can take care of that pretty easily if I go to Converter Color Ramp, and let's adjust our mist pass. And essentially, I want to eliminate the highest value. All right, so on this side, I want to add another black flag and then put that just on the other side. All right, so you can see what I'm doing there. If I drag this out a little bit more. If you think of this color ramp where black is where the camera is at, and the right side where the white color, that's the background sky texture, then all we want to do is make sure that the mountains, which are placed right around in here, we want to make sure that it's black on the other side of those mountains so that it's eliminated from this mixture. All right, so now if we look at that, we should have eliminated it completely. Yeah, so now it's just being added to the mountains. And it's very strong right now, so let's see. If I change the mixture to, let's say, screen, what about add? Let's go with screen. And then turn the color down. We can dial in exactly what value of haze we want to add to those mountains. Also, both mountains look pretty similar in color, so maybe add a flag in the middle. All right, so at this point, the left island is going to be less hazy than the right one. There we go, implying that one is further away from the other. I think that reads pretty well. Very nice. Now, you may have noticed that whenever we do this trick to eliminate the sky, that we get this outline around our objects. And that actually is kind of a happy accident because that helps to work as a function as a, what is it, light wrap. You know, when you have something bright in the background, it will wrap around the object just slightly. So if I zoom in, Alt-V, and if I even blur this a little bit, Shift-A, filter, blur. Let's just blur it very lightly, like 10 pixels. All right, let's see what that does if I go turn it on and off. Takes a second. But if you look closely at the edges, we get a tiny bit of light wrap. Anyway, it's a pretty neat side effect. Often you want to add light wrap in general to especially like when you're compositing VFX elements into live action. So anyway, happy accident. Now that second island looks a little too hazy. All right, but that is the atmospheric perspective. Next, let's address the defocus. So add a little bit of depth of field. We can do that with a filter defocus node. And we want to use the depth information, plug that into Z. So if you're new to this, Z value is often referred to as Z depth, but sometimes depending on the node, you've got either Z or depth. So in the render layers, it comes out as depth, but that just is Z. I don't know why they're not named consistently, but they're not for some reason. Now, since we're not rendering this Z information from an image sequence, we can use the Z buffer. All right, that means it's using the actual 3D data, what we set up for the camera in terms of depth of field, which we don't have anything. Okay, so we need to set that up. Because if I change the f-stop value to like 10, you're going to see that we get a lot of blur in the background and then blur up front, but then the focus is like at the front of the bushes, where we want the focus to be on our Melvin character. So I need to actually choose Melvin. All right, so I can choose that as my focus object. I don't even need to enable depth of field. This information will still be plugged into the Z information, the depth information of our render layers, I'm pretty sure. So when I do another render, the defocus node has actually been around a pretty long time. Faking depth of field with compositing has also been around a really long time, but I think it's been available ever since I started using Blender way back in like early 2.5, technically late 2.49 days. But I know with 2.5 it's been in there, but very handy node for sure to fake your depth of field. All right, so now we've got Melvin in perfect focus, everything else out of focus. It's way too strong, of course, so let's dial that down. An f-stop value, let's try 20. Even that's too much. How about 40? Yeah, I think 40 is probably realistic or plausible. I can turn off preview by default, like to save resources and make it run a little faster. You've got preview enabled. You can turn that off for a higher quality render. And you'll want that off whenever you do the final render. So, all right, that's looking pretty good. Now the only thing that's left is to kind of adjust the colors a little bit, which I like to do with a color balance node. And so, complete honesty here, I don't really know exactly what lift and gamma and gain are doing. I know that like gamma, generally, I know that has to do with like monitor and how color is being shown in a digital display or whatever. Typically, that's the correlation. But it's okay because there's only three options here, and it's easy to just start picking colors and going completely on artistic choice. That's how I like to address the color correction. So, maybe I'll make the lift more in the blue direction. And you can see that it adds more blue overall. So it's kind of cooling off the colors. Whereas if we take the gamma and go to a warmer color like yellow, there we go. That's having a pretty big effect the stronger we go. So I don't really want it to be quite like that. Turn it on and off. This is before and after. So it's adding a more rich color to everything, which I like. And then for the gain, I might make the gain darker because gain I kind of see as like a contrast or like almost like an exposure control. I'm not saying that it is an exposure control, but as I go darker, it kind of darkens the image but keeps the highlights where they are. If I go lighter, it's going to kind of brighten the image, just like an explosion. It feels like an exposure control. So I hope that's not disappointing anybody that I don't know exactly what these are doing, but I just, dial it into artistic taste. I do that a lot too. Control S. We will save this. I'm going to see before and after because I did want there to be just a little more contrast, enrich the colors a bit. So I might go even a little darker. And yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. Now for what do you call it? A vignette. So this is just a kind of a photographic technique that I always add to renders to draw focus to a certain part. It consists of darkening the outside edges and lightening the inside just a little bit, the interior. So let's add a filter. No, it's a matte ellipse mask. All right, this is literally just a circle shape. So I'm going to make it stretched from end to end and top to bottom, just like this. Filter blur. Let's make it fast Gaussian. Has anyone ever had a reason to use something other than fast Gaussian? We've got all these options, but they're all much slower than fast Gaussian, and that's the only one I've ever used. So if you have ever used something else, I'm curious as to why you have. What about the anatomy class? Let's see. Were you there for that stream? Just kidding. Yeah. I do actually have plans to teach anatomy, especially facial anatomy. But yeah, I've got to brush up on those skills. I do want to sound like I know what I'm talking about at least. So anyway, I guess I feel like if I say I use the color balance a lot, and this is what I do with it, but the only reason I have is that I'm just finding something that I like. I'm just playing with the settings until I get something that I like. People are like, that's not really teaching me how to use it. And I understand that, but it works for me. You know what I mean? So it's a very simple thing to play with and figure out, I guess. But anyway. So back to this ellipse mask, we're creating the vignette. So I want to blur this a lot, like in the X and Y value, 100. That's usually why I start with a major blur, and then I can change the factor like 2 times as blurry. Or let's go 3 times as blurry. I actually might go like 5 times as blurry. And then I can maybe shrink in the, let's look at this, shrink these in a bit. Look at the blur. Oh, cool. So watch the compositing by Blender, compositing in Blender by Bartek. He explains everything about lift, gamma, gain. He would definitely know exactly what they do. That's great advice. I need to watch that so I can regurgitate that information. Yeah, he would definitely know. Or Troy Sabatka. He's like a color, I almost said Nazi, but because he's pretty outspoken. But he knows, I think, everything there is to know about color in the digital space. He's kind of intense. Anyway, yeah, that's a great suggestion, Spike. Yeah, I need to watch that. I feel like I have, though. Anyway, what was I doing with this? Okay, I'm going to color mix. And we're going to make it an overlay. All right, let's see what that looks like. All right, so if I turn it on and off, you can see like it's a subtle effect generally. You don't really, I think a successful vignette is one that you don't notice outright. But then when you turn it off, you can see like, oh, wow, there was a lot happening. So around the edges, it gets darker and more saturated. And then in the middle, it gets slightly brighter and slightly desaturated. So you can hopefully see how that happens. But it by darkening the edges, it's like drawing our focus into the middle. And so what I think I'll do is with the overlay, a value of 1 does the brightening, like above 0.5 will brighten and desaturate, and then below 0.5 will darken and saturate. So if you're at 0.5, no effect happens. So if I add a converter color ramp, better than a color ramp, if I add a color mix node and use the blur as a factor, I can explicitly choose what values I'm overlaying. So for the black, I will take it back to black. But for the white, if we change that to 0.5, the middle will have no effect, and there will only be darkening around the sides. All right, this is actually more what I want, but I don't want the color to burn. You can see in the lower left corner, we're getting like way too much saturation. So I'm going to turn this to like 0.7, maybe I actually do think that looks pretty good. 0.7. Turn it on and off so you can see before and after. There we go. Nice little polish to the final image. And yeah, I think this is done. Render, let's see if I view my render image. All right, this is the initial compositing, but then if I switch from render result to my viewer node, this is the final. There we go. So yeah, all that effort we put into the islands, I think it reads fairly well from far away. You know, it breaks down the closer we get, but that was a really fun creative process with the dynamic island sculpting and stuff. Hope that was kind of entertaining and enlightening. I really like it when I can create that way. Very non-destructive and freeing. So yeah, that's it. I thought this would take a little bit longer than it has, but that's what I had planned. We are officially finished with the image. And are there any last questions about the project? Let me see if I missed anything. Any questions? Oh, that's great. Yeah, I need to watch that. I think it's a pretty old course, but it's not like color really has changed that much over time. So excellent suggestion, Spiky. Cool. Well, if there are no other questions, then we will call this finished, and I will start to wrap up. Oh, I do have a little surprise for you if you're interested. I have finished the new trailer for my course, and no one has seen it yet, but I figured I would show it to you to kind of end the stream if you were interested. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about this course. Been working on it for the past couple months. It does have to do with the treasure chest that you may have seen me tweeting about. But I kind of had a lot of fun with visuals for like playing up this project in the trailer. So I think I'll play that for you if you guys are into it. And I did have issues with the sound, so fingers crossed that the sound is going to play. But I will play that. What did you think? Does that get anyone excited? I see Silent Heart, you want to watch that. Aaron, you're into the idea of doing something stylized. So the treasure chest is in the same theme. If I switch to my browser, if you are interested in the class, where is it? Forum. So I'm running a class next month in August. Technically, the very end of July is when it starts. Yeah, so if you're interested in this class, it segues off of the treasure chest course, and so the challenge with the class is that you choose one of these assets. So these are all kind of in the same realm, you know, like medieval sword, a barrel, a sign, a treasure chest. I'm going to add that to be an option that you can model the treasure chest. So anyway, it's kind of this medieval type theme, medieval / also we've been doing the tropical island, so I have like a Pirates of the Caribbean vibe going on. But anyway, the course that's going to be released this week, I have to get it out in the next couple of days because I'm going to go on vacation next week, so it has to happen before then. So keep your eyes out for that, but it will segue into the August class. And yeah, that's the kind of master 2.8 plan, like to usher in the new version. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy that course. Definitely let me know what you think about it if you watch it. But with that said, last thing I wanted to say, the Sheep It initiative. I talked about it last week. I wanted to kind of update. Since talking about it, we've had, let's see, where's our team at? Yeah, we've had several people join the team, and I'm really impressed with the amount of rendering that's been done in such a short amount of time. We're almost to 1 million points between the 12 of us right now. Which I find pretty impressive that 12 of you have joined when I didn't really do a great job of I feel like explaining or making that information available. So thank you for joining. I want to do a more official post on the forum to invite everybody, that watches the stream or not. Because I'd love to build this up to be 20, 30, 40 people again, so that if any of us have a project that needs rendering, we can submit it to Sheepit and everyone in this team will start working on that together, which is just a really cool asset that we could have together. So yeah, thanks for joining. We've got some monsters in here like Splat and Shinigami 01. They're just rendering like crazy, but Tom Nee is fast approaching. So yeah, you joined the 15th. What is that? But yeah, it was yesterday and you've already got 106,000 points. Anyway, thank you guys. I really would like to see this grow. Omar, I don't think he's in the stream, unfortunately. I wanted to ask him if his project was ready to render, but he's going to be our first test. Though, I mean, technically, if any of you have a project that you want to test, what I would recommend, so yeah, let's talk about this. Omar has kind of paved the way by having a project that he needed rendering, posting in the forum, in the community forum, and communicating about it that way. I would suggest if you have a project you would like rendered, submit to the forum the same way, community forum, and like Omar says, help render Omar Dominic's demo reel. Make a post similar to this, and the Sheepit team, like, we can jump on it at that point. So I guess that's how to announce that you have something. I think we should try to announce that way that you have something to render. So if you have something, let us know, and we can start working on it as a team. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool to get started like this. It does feel weird without Omar being here. It might have been he just didn't he didn't see that I published one. I don't think I've ever published on the day of a stream. That's pretty bad on my part. But anyway, thank you guys for hanging out with me. I will let you go. Hope you found the tropical island project fun. I certainly had fun with it. Oh, wait. One more thing I definitely need to say. Last week, the topic came up, why is linking important or better than like data sharing and keeping all the stuff local? I talked to Wayne because I couldn't really come up with a great answer last week, other than like, it's just how the pros do it, which is a pretty bad answer. But I talked to Wayne and he made a great point. He clarified it for me, especially with animation. Linking becomes very important, like animation projects, because there's multiple scenes involved with animation production. If you think of like an animated movie, or you think of even a television show, or even small animated productions, like you're going to have multiple scenes with different shots, different camera angles of the same characters, often the same assets, that need to be easily linked into other scenes. You don't want to put all of that data, all the models locally, because if you want to change a model in the local scene, you have to go to the other scenes that have the same asset and make those updates manually. That would be a nightmare to actually do. So this is where linking comes in, because if you were doing a short film or just like a 5-shot animation, and you've got the same character in all 5 shots, but you want to change the eye color, for example, or add a control to the rig, you want to do that in the source file that's part of the library. And then that will update and propagate to all scenes that have that that asset in the scene. That's where linking not only becomes better, but becomes crucial to the production process. Now, for this project, I've been using linking because the whole project was inspired off of a production I'm working on in my spare time. But being a still shot, it's really not that important. You could treat everything locally if you wanted to. That being said, though, let me go back to Blender, where I did find it useful for this project. When I was doing R&D assemblies, I had multiple versions because I knew I wanted an island scene, but I didn't know exactly what the staging would be like. And I had different versions. If we open up, let's see, Beach 01, I can't remember. Oh, I must have moved all my files. That stinks. I can't really show you that well. So, well, you can kind of see the framing for this was different. What else? Version 3 was really different. Yeah, you can't really see it, but like there's a ton of trees on the right side. Wonder if I can local or external data find missing files. R&D library props. Nope. I messed up my connections, but anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that whenever I was trying to figure out what type of island scene I wanted to create, it was great for having linked assets that I could just move around and update locally, update across the board as I needed. But anyway, for a single still frame type project, linking is not terribly important, but for animation, super important. So hopefully that's a better explanation than what I gave you last time. All right, that's it. I will finally let you go. Thank you for sticking around. I don't see any last questions, but awesome. Yeah, you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'm not going to see you next week. I'm not sure that I'll be streaming until the class. Let me remind myself of the schedule. Let's see. In 2 days, you have Wes, coffee and art with Wes. Then you have community critiques. That's when I'm on vacation. That's with Lampel and Jonathan Williamson. He is still alive, and he's going to be participating in the community challenge critiques. So show up for that. He's a legend in this community, in the Blender community at large. So it'll be fun to see him on stream again. And then, yeah, so the class starts the 30th of July, and that's when I will see you again. I will bid you farewell. See you next time.